how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Freddy or Not, where my name is Freddy and I'm ready to dive into today's topic, which is Demon Slayer. Specifically, the strongest Demon Slayers, the Hashira. So be sure to like and subscribe because in this video, I'm ranking every Hashira from weakest to strongest. Manga spoilers, by the way. Starting off, we have the 4 previous Hashira. To go through them quickly, in last place we have Jigoro Kuwajima, aka Zenitsu's master Gramps. He's feetless. Followed by Rokudaki, whose best feat is beating the hand demon. After this, we get to Rengoku's dad, who beat a demon while drunk, who shortly after this would go on to become lower rank too. And finally Kanae. She was able to fend off Doma long enough to not get eaten, and although we don't know the circumstances of that fight, this is still more impressive than the other previous Hashira, at least. With that settled, we can move on to the 9 main Hashira shown to us throughout the series. Now, scaling these guys is pretty contentious, so I feel the best way to do this is to first establish whether the upper moons are ranked in order of strength, because if they are, then that makes this a lot easier. For anyone confused why this is even a question, this stems from Ryui in the fanbook being stated to have the power of lower rank 1 or 2, but just didn't challenge to move up his rank, which has led some to say that the upper moons might also be ranked out of order. But for the purposes of this video, all we need to do is establish whether ranks 1, 3, 4, and 6 are in order. Starting with upper rank 1, we obviously have a narrator statement saying Kokushibo is the strongest upper moon, so that's fine. Next, I don't think anyone is really debating whether Akaza is stronger than Hatengu, so the last one I'll mention is Gyutaro versus Hatengu. Tanjiro, after fighting Daki, was exhausted to the point that he was bleeding out his eyes, it was burning through his life force, it was literally about to die. And this Tanjiro can still perceive Gyutaro's attacks, and later, after passing out a second time, Tanjiro is able to react to Gyutaro's blood demon art, although Gyutaro was poisoned at that time. Then, in the Swordsmith Village arc, Tanjiro goes through training, unlocks precognition, and gains the mark, and even still he's struggling to react to a wood dragon from Hatengu. Obviously, Hatengu and Zohakuten have stronger abilities than this, especially considering their blood demon art. So long story short, it does seem that these upper moons are in order. Anyway, that's a lot of preamble, but with this, the scaling for most characters should be a lot easier. And we can move on to the discussion of who is the weakest among the modern day Hashira. And we really only have 2 candidates, Tengen and Shinobu. Tengen is easy to go over as he just goes blow for blow Gyutaro, who's upper rank 6, while Shinobu on the other hand is a weird case because she's too weak to decapitate any demon and has to resort to her poison. It's implied at least twice that her poison is too weak to kill an upper moon. That being said, based on her fight with Doma, I've seen people scale her 3 ways, either as the weakest Hashira bar none, upper 5 level, or somehow upper 2 level, saying she scales to Doma. But that's kind of a misinterpretation of how Doma fights. Doma likes to play around with his opponents, and in every fight we've ever seen from him, he immediately perception blitzes his opponents, engages their strength, and once he realizes they aren't threats, just holds back tremendously and plays around with them. Which is also why he only whips out his major moves like the Buddha at the end of the fight, when he actually realized the stakes and felt threatened. Now, Shinobu, in the fight against Doma, gets perception blitzed when he chops up that girl. Shinobu also stabs him when he's talking and off guard. But this isn't really impressive though, as Doma's durability really isn't all that, since even characters like Kanao also chop him up. He kinda just doesn't care though, since his regeneration is so strong. But beyond that, we can mention that Shinobu didn't train during the Hashira training arc, and she was previously subdued by a pre-training arc Giyu. And then it's confirmed Giyu went through the Hashira training and then unlocked his mark and is now fighting upper 3 Akaza. So it would make no sense for her mental boost in this fight to make her upper 2 level, especially since even with her mental boost, she is still weaker than Kanao. Since Doma says she is more skilled than Shinobu and has better reaction speed. And this is shown since Kanao avoided an attack without getting any ice on her, which is something Shinobu was not able to do. And then in the fanbook, it states that people say she's equal to or stronger than Shinobu, which is a weird statement, but still. I don't think Shinobu was the secret powerhouse of the Hashira, so where does she really scale? We could be charitable to Shinobu and say that she's around Kanao's level, and say that the Kamaboku squad are all relative, meaning she should be comparable to Zenitsu, and Zenitsu in his fight against the upper 6 demon Kaigaku one-shotted him with Form 7. This is pretty contentious, however, because the statement afterwards that Kaigaku wasn't used to their blood demon art, and that if he was, he would have instantly killed Zenitsu. We can scale this two ways. Either Zenitsu is a blitz level above Upper Moon 6 and more on that upper 5 tier, or we could say that Kaigaku wasn't really on the level of Gyutaro due to not mastering his blood demon art, and therefore the Kamaboku squad, and by extension Shinobu, are all just vaguely upper 6 level. Personally, I can see this going either way, but I'm just going to assume that the reason this statement was included at all wasn't just to point out that Yushiro is a but to state that they really aren't on Tengen's level yet. Therefore, I'm gonna say Shinobu's the weakest modern day Hashira, with Tengen in second place. But if you want to swap those two, that's fine. Next up, Mitsuri. Now, an interesting thing about Mitsuri is that she never uses her mark in the final arc. It is never shown, and they never mention it, so I assume she just didn't use it, meaning her peak was actually in the Swordsmith Village arc. In that arc, she's going back and forth Zohakuten, which is upper rank 4. In 6th place, maybe controversially, I have the one and only Rengoku. Don't get me wrong, Rengoku is obscenely strong. He was able to go band for band with Akaza after all, to the point that even Akaza acknowledged his strength and wanted him to become a demon. However, this is where he caps out. And Rengoku is followed by the emo boy himself, the first Hashira we ever meet, Giyu Tomioka. Now, Giyu with the mark is kinda just Rengoku plus. He also fights Akaza and is fighting him fairly equally. What puts him over Rengoku is how Akaza was whipping out stronger attacks against Giyu, and Giyu, especially with Dead Calm, was able to respond in kind. The main controversy I can see happening with this placement is from Giyu's performance in the final fight against Muzan, but this largely comes down to how wonky the scaling is at that part. Most of the Hashira are in various degrees of exhausted, ranging from characters like Obanai who are relatively unharmed, to characters like Sanemi who at this point are fighting to even hold themselves together. While Muzan is constantly getting nerfed and buffed to the point that it's becoming confusing. To make this simple, I think the easiest way to approach this is to explain roughly how strong Muzan is at that time. Now don't get me wrong, even with all his nerfs, Muzan is the biggest threat in the series and like the second strongest person in the franchise, except for Yoriichi. But a large part of this is how difficult he is to kill, how relentless he is with his attacks, as well as the sheer overwhelming nature of how many attacks he was launching at once. Not really his stats. First off, it's important to mention that Muzan did not blitz the Hashira. I know this is something people like to say, but Muzan actually did an AoE attack that launched rubble at the Hashira and took everyone out, which is why they're kinda launched everywhere, even in the second floor of buildings. Regardless, in terms of speed, we can actually use Giyu as a good gauge. Now, Giyu was exhausted after the Akaza fight, as we literally see Akaza hitting him with a punch he was reacting to earlier, but even still, he was able to use Dead Calm to block most of Akaza's Afterglow technique, and in the Muzan fight, he was able to use Dead Calm to block most of Muzan's whip attacks. As we see, he blocked almost everything, but still took damage on his shoulder, meaning Giyu is pretty close to his mark state here, although slightly weaker, and Muzan's speed is only slightly faster than Akaza at this point. Which is also why Tanjiro can react to Muzan's attack at his distance, but get hits when he gets up close. Also, all the Hashira are able to block Muzan's attacks, meaning Muzan at this point is only slightly faster than Akaza, and is launching attacks literally everyone can block. Pair this with Sanemi being weakened after the Kokushibo fight, and it's clear that Giyu did not get stronger in the Muzan fight, even if he's keeping up with Sanemi and blocking attacks from Muzan. Moving on, in 4th place I have Muichiro. On the surface, this seems odd, especially since Rengoku and Giyu are kinda him, but the difference here is just the gap between Akaza and Kokushibo. Muichiro, with the see-through world, was seeing things in slow motion and was able to dodge Longsword Kokushibo's attacks, and even land a blow on him. Granted, Kokushibo was nerfed by Sanemi's blood, and the attack Muichiro dodged was from far away, but still, this is insanely impressive, especially since even while nerfed by Sanemi's blood, this form of Kokushibo is still stronger than his base, whose perception blitzed Akaza. So, overall, Muichiro has insane reaction speed, to the point that the fighters beneath him would struggle to hit him, and even if they did, Muichiro has superhuman endurance, not to mention his red blade. This should be enough to earn him this spot. Taking home the bronze medal, we have Obanai. All of Obanai's good scaling comes from the Muzan fights. First off, in base, he's keeping up with Giyu, who as previously stated should only be slightly weaker than his mark self from the Akaza fight. And then Obanai gets his mark, as well as a red blade and limited access to the see-through world. And quite frankly, all of this, on top of his base which was already keeping up with Giyu, should be enough to put him above Muichiro. I don't think Muichiro is like 3 power-ups stronger than Giyu, that's a bit much. Also, just in case you were curious, 13th form Tanjiro is fighting side by side with Obanai in this fight. But keep in mind, Tanjiro was in rough shape by the time he used the 13th form, so a hypothetical healthy 13th form Tanjiro might just be absolutely cracked. Maybe stronger than all the Hashira, just based on how much they glaze sun breathing. Unfortunately, we will never know. Now, in second place, we have Sanemi. In terms of feats, he held his own against Kokushibo until he whipped out the longsword. Sanemi has incredible endurance, literally keeping his guts from spilling out by flexing his muscles, which is crazy. He also has the red blade and the mark, and was doing combo attacks with Gyomei, meaning there's at least some relativity there. Not to mention, Muichiro heavily implies he thinks Sanemi and Gyomei are stronger than him, which is backed up since we see Muichiro lose a leg to the same attack that Sanemi avoided and counterattacked against. Now, I was kinda going back and forth between Obanai and Sanemi for the number 2 spot, but since they both have the mark and the red blade, and the see-through world doesn't seem to give too crazy of a speed boost, since Tanjiro was already outpacing Akaza, literally doing backflips on the guy, even before the see-through world, so this placement really just kinda comes down to their base forms. Base Obanai is keeping up with Giyu, who's fighting Akaza, while base Sanemi is keeping up with Kokushibo, who's perception blitzing Akaza. And Obanai, fighting Muzan, while extremely impressive, isn't quite enough to say he's above Sanemi, since even though he outperformed Sanemi, who was also keeping up with Giyu, Sanemi was worse for wear after the Kokushibo fight and wasn't at full strength. And it's not like Obanai gets much good scaling from Muzan, meaning Sanemi just has more going for him, and as such, takes the number 2 spot. Finally, the gold medal goes to the one and only Stone Hashira. In terms of performance, he does the best in the Kokushibo fight. He has better reaction speed than Sanemi, literally saving him during the Kokushibo fight. He has the see-through world and the mark. He managed to trick Kokushibo by changing the blood flow in his body, which should be impossible, by the way. Absolute monster. Next, Gyomei is stated to be the strongest several times. In the fanbook, there's a section where the Hashira describe each other, and almost everyone calls him the strongest. Kokushibo glazes him to have like a perfect body and be the strongest swordsman he's encountered in centuries, and every attack from this guy is just blowing off body parts off of Muzan and Kokushibo. Gyomei is kind of insane and truly deserves the title as the strongest Hashira. Well, that's all I got for you today, folks. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.